Hey guys, it's Hank from SprueBrothers, and today I'm going to show you how I used Tamiya's modern classic Bf-109G-6 kit to create Erich Hartmann's infamous black Tulip Gustav that he was flying circa fall 1944. Now, I didn't film the build process for this kit. There are already plenty of great videos on YouTube documenting that process, so we're just going to pick it up from the painting stage. The only modification worth noting here is the canopy. I replaced the stock greenhouse canopy with an Erich Hartmann canopy that I borrowed from an Edward Weekend Edition kit. The improved visibility canopy was produced by Erich Maschinenwerk starting at the end of 1943 and was installed on Hartmann's G6s starting in the summer of 1944. I started off by priming the entire vehicle with Vallejo black acrylic primer to give us a nice surface to work with. Next, I painted the belly and lower portion of the fuselage with AMMO MIG RLM 76 Pale Gray. I went about halfway up the fuselage with the RLM 76. This will give us a good midpoint to work down to with our darker colors. From there, I used regular Tamiya 18mm masking tape and some of their masking tape for curves to mask off the wing roots. For the main upper surfaces of the aircraft, we're going to use RLM 75 Grauviolett. Here, I'm blocking in that entire upper surface of the wing with that RLM 75. With those complete, we can remove the masks and reveal that nice crisp line at the wing root. We're going to use that same RLM 75 Grauviolett for the spine of the aircraft and the upper surfaces of the horizontal stabilizers. This gives us a nice two-tone camouflage to start adding some detail work. For the wing camouflage, I start by masking off some large geometric splinters. We're going to spray those in with RLM 74 Graugrün. It's a bit hard to see here, but just hang tight until we take the masks off. Now we can start to see how well that RLM 74 and RLM 75 sit next to each other. I really love the color palette of these late war paint schemes. Hopping back to our fuselage, I've modeled in a bit of Graugrün around the canopy area to break up all that Grauviolett on the spine. We're going to continue with the Graugrün and add a handful of very subtle models going back along the fuselage sides. Some of these can extend down into the RLM 76 on the lower fuselage as well. I added some additional modeling on either side of the fuselage using some RLM 02 Green Slate and RLM 80 Olivgrün. It's a bit hard to see because it's quite subtle, but these are the actual RLM colors that would have been used on this aircraft. It's camouflage after all, so we don't want it to look too stark. With the modeling complete, I masked up the rear segment of the fuselage and the undersides of the wingtips to add the yellow identification marks. These were sprayed on with AMMO MIG Zinc Chromate yellow. The lower engine cowling was also painted the same color. With all the painting complete, I sprayed up the whole kit with a gloss coat of AK Interactive Intermediate Gauzy Agent to prepare for decals. I'm using an aftermarket decal sheet from Eagle Cals for this particular vehicle. This was my first time using their product and I was very impressed with the quality. The trickiest part of this whole project was the Tulip decals, as you might expect. Eagle Cals recreated this iconic scheme with 14 individual pieces, which allowed me to go slow and make sure each petal settled nicely over the cowl details. I applied all 7 white petals and coaxed them into position with many coats of microsol and some Q-tips. Since I only needed the edges of these white petals to stay intact, I used a brand new scalpel blade to remove any of the most egregious wrinkles. Next, I repeated this process with the black petals. The name of the game here is patience. In between each application of solution, I worked on applying some of the other decals and stencils while the tulips settled completely. At this point, I broke out the big guns and traded my Microsol for some Mark Fit Strong to really force those decals into all the nooks and crannies of the engine cowling. After a day's worth of applications, literally, the Tulip pedals had finally settled into place. I'm really happy with how these came out because I was pretty nervous about this phase of the build. With the rest of the decals applied as well, it was finally time to move on to weathering. I sprayed the aircraft with another coat of AK Gauzy Agent to protect all of our work so far. To start, I used some Flory dark dirt to accentuate the panel lines. This was brushed onto the whole model in sections and allowed to dry completely. Once dry, I wiped off the excess Flory with a damp paper towel. This is a great product, it's super easy to work with, doesn't have any caustic chemicals, and it settles very nicely into all the recesses of the model. For a little added richness to the panel weathering, I added some small dots of burnt umber oil paint along the panel lines. This was then blended in with a Q-tip dipped in a bit of enamel thinner. I really like to add these rich, rusty tones to any green-gray aircraft like this. For the tires, I used a little AMMO MIG Pacific dust wash. Any excess can be easily removed later with some enamel thinner. I used a similar process with AMMO MIG dark wash on the landing gear struts and the wheel wells. With all that complete, I sprayed the whole vehicle with a coat of AMMO MIG Lucky Matte varnish and started to remove the canopy masks. Now it was time to mount the wheels and canopy to the main body of the model. It's all starting to come together now. For a few finishing touches, I like to add some very subtle scratches to the paint with a metallic pencil. I like this super light approach to my chipping as these vehicles wouldn't have been too banged up during their relatively short lifespan in the field. I use this same pencil to add some detail to the leading edges of the propeller blades and on the cannon and MG barrels. The very last step is to add our antenna wire, and that completes our build. I'm super happy with how this came out, and I'm so glad to finally be able to add one of Erich Hartmann's iconic vehicles to my collection. The Tulip scheme was a nice challenge, but the Eagle Cal decals worked out great, and there was almost no silvering at all. Please hit that like button if you enjoyed the video. Your support really helps me grow the channel, and you can also subscribe for more scale modeling content. I try and post something new about once a week. Alright, so that's it for me today. Until next time, guys, be well, happy building, cheers.